The first time Elena's phone rang at midnight, I barely registered it through the fog of sleep. February 6th, a Tuesday that had been unremarkable in every way until that moment. I'd spent the evening grading physics exams, red pen scratching across papers as students tried to convince me that perpetual motion machines were theoretically possible if we just thought outside the box. My fingers were still stained with ink when the harsh buzz of Elena's phone cut through our bedroom. Data Vault emergency line, she answered immediately, her voice shifting from groggy to alert in an instant. Yes, I understand. Complete system failure on the Morrison servers? I opened one eye, watching her silhouette move through the darkness. After 15 years of marriage, I knew her routines, her patterns, the way she moved when stressed versus relaxed. This was different, practiced, almost rehearsed. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she continued into the phone. Yes, I'll implement the recovery protocols immediately. She was already out of bed, moving to the closet with purpose. The light from her phone screen illuminated her face briefly. No panic there, just determination mixed with something else I couldn't quite identify. Everything okay? I mumbled, propping myself up on one elbow. Server emergency, honey. She pulled on jeans and a Data Vault Solutions polo shirt, the uniform of crisis response. Morrison Industries, the pharmaceutical company, their entire backup system is failing. Could lose 3 months of clinical trial data if we don't act fast. Sounds serious. I was more awake now, watching her gather her things. Want me to make you coffee for the road? No time, but thank you. She leaned over the bed, kissing my forehead. Her lips were surprisingly cold, as if she'd been awake longer than I'd thought. Go back to sleep. I'll probably be gone until morning. Drive safe, I called after her, as she grabbed her laptop bag from its spot by the door. She made a point of picking up her company keycard from the dresser, holding it up almost theatrically. Never leave without it, she said. Can't save servers if I can't get in the building. The bedroom door clicked shut. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, careful but quick. The garage door rumbled open. Her Camry's engine started, and then she was gone, leaving me alone in our king-sized bed with nothing but questions I didn't yet know I should be asking. I tried to go back to sleep but couldn't. Something felt off about the whole interaction. Elena had been handling emergencies at Data Vault for 7 years, ever since she'd been promoted to senior network administrator. But usually there were follow-up calls, texts from team members, the constant buzz of crisis management. Tonight, after that single call, her phone had been silent. I got up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet Scottsdale street. The Johnsons' house across the way was dark. The Petersons' security light clicked on as a cat walked through their yard. Normal suburban midnight, except my wife was supposedly racing toward a technical disaster that could cost millions. Unable to return to sleep, I went downstairs and made myself tea. While it steeped, I opened my laptop and logged into our shared Google Calendar. Elena was meticulous about scheduling, color-coding her life into neat categories. Work meetings in blue, personal appointments in green, date nights in red, increasingly rare these days, and emergencies in yellow. There was no yellow block for tonight. I checked her work calendar, which she'd given me access to years ago so we could coordinate schedules. Nothing there either. No maintenance window, no scheduled downtime, no indication that Morrison Industries had planned any server work that could go wrong. But I was being paranoid, wasn't I? Emergencies by definition weren't scheduled. Systems failed without warning. That's why companies like Data Vault paid people like Elena excellent salaries to be ready at a moment's notice. I spent the rest of the night grading papers, trying to focus on velocity equations and force diagrams instead of the gnawing uncertainty in my stomach. Elena returned at 5:45 a.m., just as dawn was breaking over the desert landscape. "How'd it go?" I asked, meeting her in the kitchen where I was already making coffee. "Exhausting, but successful." She accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping both hands around it. "We managed to restore everything from the mirror servers. Morrison won't even know how close they came to disaster." "My hero," I said, meaning it. "Saving pharmaceutical data, possibly saving lives." "Hardly that dramatic." But she smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her in weeks. "Just doing my job. I'm going to shower and try to get an hour of sleep before heading to the office." "You should call in sick. You've been up all night." "Can't. Follow-up meetings all day about the failure. Need to document everything for the incident report." She headed upstairs, leaving me with my coffee and a strange feeling I couldn't shake. When she'd kissed me just now, thanking me for the coffee, she hadn't smelled like the server room at Data Vault. That distinctive combination of electronics, industrial cooling, and recycled air that usually clung to her after long nights with the machines. She smelled like perfume. Something floral and expensive that definitely wasn't her usual scent. The second emergency came 10 days later, February 16th, a Friday. This time I was awake, reading a Scientific American article about quantum entanglement in bed while Elena dozed beside me. Her phone buzzed at 1:15 a.m. "Henderson Group," she said immediately upon answering, as if she'd been expecting the call. "Firewall breach?" I watched her more carefully this time. She was out of bed before finishing the sentence, moving with practiced efficiency. No fumbling for clothes, no confusion about where she'd left things. Everything was exactly where she needed it to be. "I'll initialize countermeasures from home first," she said into the phone, already opening her laptop. "Give me 3 minutes to assess the breach severity." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, but something was wrong. I knew Elena's typing pattern after years of hearing it through home office walls. This wasn't her usual rhythm, too regular, too repetitive. She was typing gibberish, making a show of working. "Can't establish a secure connection," she announced after exactly 3 minutes. "I'll need direct server access." "Be there in 20. She snapped the laptop shut and started dressing. I pretended to read my magazine but watched her over the top of it. "Another late night for you," I said. They should give you hazard pay for these hours." "They pay me well enough." She pulled on her shoes, not looking at me. "Besides, when the Henderson Group's firewall is breached, we're talking about potential access to millions of credit card numbers. Can't put a price on preventing that." "Want company? I could drive you. Wait in the car with coffee and moral support?" That's sweet, but no. She was already heading for the door. These things can take hours. No point in both of us losing sleep. Besides, security gets weird about non-employees in the parking lot after midnight. After she left, I did something I'd never done before in our marriage. I checked her dresser drawer where she kept personal items. Her company keycard was still there, tucked under some jewelry boxes. The one she'd grabbed so demonstratively was her gym membership card. I sat on the bed, holding the keycard, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe she had a duplicate. Maybe she kept the spare at home for emergencies. But why the elaborate show of taking the wrong card? I went to my laptop and pulled up Data Vault's website. They had a client portal where companies could check system status and scheduled maintenance. I knew Elena's login from helping her work from home during COVID. My hands trembled slightly as I typed her credentials. The Henderson Group's status showed all green lights. No reported breaches, no emergency tickets, no indication of any problems whatsoever. Their last logged issue was a routine password reset 3 weeks ago. Elena returned at 5:30 a.m., exhausted and disheveled. This time, I was waiting in the kitchen with breakfast. "You didn't have to do this," she said, seeing the spread of eggs and toast. "Couldn't sleep," I lied. "Figured you'd need food after fighting cybercriminals all night." "It was mostly script kiddies," she said, using the hacker slang a bit too carefully, like someone who'd practiced the term. Kids thinking they're clever, not realizing they're playing with federal crimes. "Did you catch them?" "We patched the vulnerability and traced the IP addresses. Legal will handle the rest." She pushed eggs around her plate, not really eating. "I need to shower. I probably smell like server room." But she didn't. She smelled like cologne. Men's cologne. Something expensive and woody that definitely wasn't mine. The third emergency came 8 days later, February 24th, a Saturday. We'd actually made love that evening, the first time in nearly a month. Elena had seemed distracted during, her mind clearly elsewhere, but I'd attributed it to work stress. Data Vault was preparing for a big acquisition, and she'd been putting in long hours even without the emergencies. At 11:58 p.m., her phone rang. Mirror array failure. She was already moving, already grabbing clothes. "Yes, I'll implement the backup protocols immediately." This time, I decided to test something. "Which client?" I asked, sitting up. She paused for just a fraction of a second. "What?" "Which client is having the mirror array failure?" "Morrison again?" "No, it's confidential. Major client. Can't discuss specifics." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "You know how NDAs work?" "Right, of course." I nodded, playing along. "Hey, your keycard is on my nightstand. I moved it when I was cleaning earlier." "My keycard?" She looked confused, then quickly recovered. "Oh, right, thanks." She grabbed my library card from my nightstand, pocketed it without looking, and picked up her gym card from the dresser with the same theatrical flourish as before. "Drive safe," I said. "Love you." "Love you too," she replied automatically, already halfway out the door. As soon as I heard her car leave the garage, I got dressed. I wasn't going to follow her. That felt too much like stalking. But I was going to drive to Data Vault's offices just to see for myself. The drive to Tempe took 15 minutes at this time of night. The roads were empty except for the occasional drunk driver weaving home from Mill Avenue bars. Data Vault's building sat in a tech complex off the 101, a gleaming 3-story structure with the company logo lit up in blue LED. The parking lot was completely empty. Not a single car, not even security. The building was dark, except for emergency lighting. No sign of a mirror array failure response. No IT team rushing to save critical data. No Elena. I circled the complex twice, checking every entrance, every possible parking area. Then I drove to the adjacent complexes, thinking maybe I'd misremembered the exact building. Nothing. The entire tech corridor was as dead as you'd expect at 12:30 a.m. on a Saturday night. My phone buzzed with a credit card notification. Elena had just used our joint card at a gas station. I checked the location. Paradise Valley. Completely opposite direction from Data Vault, in one of Phoenix's wealthiest neighborhoods. I sat in the empty parking lot, engine idling, trying to make sense of what was happening. My wife had left our house claiming a work emergency. driven to Paradise Valley instead of her office, and was now buying gas at a station that served a neighborhood where houses started at $2 million. The physics teacher in me knew that objects in motion follow predictable paths unless acted upon by outside forces. Elena's path tonight made no sense unless there was a force I wasn't seeing. Something or someone pulling her toward Paradise Valley instead of Tempe. I drove home slowly, my mind racing through possibilities. An affair was the obvious answer, but with whom? And why the elaborate deception about work emergencies? Why not just say she was going out with friends or working late at the actual office? When Elena returned at 5:20 a.m., I pretended to be asleep. I listened to her careful footsteps, the immediate shower, the way she slipped into bed trying not to wake me. She smelled like soap and shampoo, having washed away whatever evidence the night had left on her. The next morning, Sunday, I started my investigation in earnest. While Elena slept late, claiming exhaustion from her server emergency, I began documenting everything. First, I called DataVault's main number, navigating their phone tree to the automated system status line. All DataVault systems are operating normally. No reported outages or maintenance windows scheduled for the next 72 hours. I checked our phone bill online. The midnight calls all came from the same number, 4-805-550-147. Not DataVault's main line, emergency line, or any number listed on their website. I ran a reverse lookup. It was a personal Verizon cell phone, no name attached. I installed a tracking app on our shared iPad that would sync with Elena's iPhone location. She'd given me her Apple ID password years ago for family sharing, never thinking I'd use it for this. I created a spreadsheet documenting the 3 emergencies so far. Dates, times, durations, her explanations, her demeanor before and after. The pattern was clear. Every 8 to 10 days, between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., lasting 4 to 5 hours. Monday morning, I called in sick to school, the first time in 5 years. As soon as Elena left for work, I began a deeper investigation of our finances. The credit card statement showed charges I didn't recognize. A $300 dinner at Mastro's City Hall in Paradise Valley 3 weeks ago. Elena had told me she was at a company training session that night. A $500 charge at Neiman Marcus for clothing and accessories that I'd never seen her wear. Multiple charges at the Phoenician Resort Spa during her supposed work hours. I found a bank statement for an account I didn't know existed. A Merrill Lynch investment account in Elena's name only, opened 13 months ago. The balance was staggering, $147,000. I knew Elena's salary. Even with her recent raise, there was no way she could have saved this much without me knowing. The transaction history was even more interesting. 17 stock purchases over the past year, all in companies that had subsequently announced partnerships or acquisitions with DataVault. Every single trade had been profitable, with returns ranging from 15% to 60% within weeks of purchase. This wasn't luck. This was insider trading. I photographed everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud account, then carefully replaced all the documents exactly as I'd found them. Elena couldn't know I was investigating. Not yet. That evening, I watched Elena more carefully than I had in years. She moved through our house like an actress on a stage, playing the role of devoted wife. She asked about my day, listened to my stories about difficult students, laughed at my physics jokes. But there was a distance in her eyes, like she was calculating something I couldn't see. "You seem tired," I said over dinner. "All these emergencies are taking a toll." "It's been a rough patch," she agreed. but it should calm down once we finish the Morrison contract renewal. I thought the Morrison emergency was about their servers failing, not contract negotiations. She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. Right, yes. But the server failure made them nervous about renewal. We're having to provide extra assurances. It was a smooth recovery, but I caught the momentary panic in her eyes. She was lying, and not as well as she thought. That night, I lay awake beside her, studying the ceiling and planning my next moves. I needed to know who she was meeting in Paradise Valley. I needed evidence of the affair, documentation that would hold up in court. But more than that, I needed to understand why. Why the elaborate deception? Why the fake emergencies? Why risk her career and our marriage for whoever was on the other end of that phone? Wednesday brought an unexpected breakthrough. I was teaching my AP physics class, explaining angular momentum, when my phone buzzed with a Google alert I'd set up for Data Vault. A new article in the Phoenix Business Journal. Data Vault CEO Marcus Webb finalizes divorce. Focuses on IPO preparation. Marcus Webb. I knew that name, had heard Elena mention him in passing. The wonder kid who'd founded Data Vault at 26, built it into a massive success story, and now, recently divorced. During my lunch break, I researched Marcus Webb extensively. His Instagram was a carefully curated display of wealth. Ferraris, private jets, vacation homes in Aspen and Cabo. But the recent posts caught my attention. Starting about 3 months ago, many photos included a woman whose face was always obscured or turned away. The same build as Elena, the same hair color, wearing jewelry I didn't recognize. One photo, posted 3 weeks ago at 1:47 a.m., showed a woman's hand on the leather interior of a Bentley. The caption, "Late night drives with someone special." The timestamp matched one of Elena's emergencies. I searched property records for Paradise Valley. Marcus Webb owned a $2.8 million estate on Mockingbird Lane, purchased 2 years ago during his marriage, awarded to him in the divorce. The pieces were falling into place, but I needed concrete evidence. I couldn't confront Elena with Instagram photos and suspicions. I needed proof that would be undeniable. I hired a private investigator that afternoon. Diane Snyder came highly recommended for corporate misconduct cases. We met at a coffee shop near my school, and I laid out everything I'd discovered. I need to know the full scope, I told her. Not just the affair, but everything. The insider trading, the fake emergencies, all of it. Diane was thorough and professional. "Give me 2 weeks," she said. "I'll have everything you need." Those 2 weeks were torture. I had to continue playing the role of unsuspecting husband while Elena played the role of faithful wife. We ate dinners together, watched Netflix, made small talk about our days. All while I knew she was betraying me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The fourth emergency came right on schedule, March 5th, a Monday. I was ready. "Complete cascade failure in the backup systems," Elena said into her phone at 12:03 a.m. "I'll implement the recovery protocol immediately." This time, I had the tracking app ready. I watched on my phone as her location dot moved through Scottsdale, turned onto Lincoln Drive, and stopped at Marcus Webb's estate. She stayed there until 5:20 a.m. When she came home, I had breakfast waiting again. "Another rough night?" I asked, pouring her coffee. "The worst yet." We almost lost everything. The entire backup system cascaded. If I hadn't caught it when I did. She shook her head dramatically. "Good thing they have you," I said. "Data Vault is lucky to have someone so dedicated." Marcus said the same thing, she said, then caught herself. "I mean, mister." Webb. He sent a thank you email to the whole emergency response team. That's nice of him. Good to know the CEO appreciates the little people. Something flickered in her eyes. He's not like that. Marcus is actually very hands-on, very involved with the technical side. Marcus, you're on a first-name basis with the CEO. Everyone calls him Marcus, she said quickly. He's very informal. It's the tech culture thing. I nodded, filing away her defensive tone, the way she said his name with subtle warmth. Diane Snyder called me 3 days later with initial findings. It's worse than an affair, she said. Your wife is being positioned for a massive promotion to Chief Technology Officer. She's skipping over 14 more qualified candidates. The promotion will be announced right before the IPO to maximize her equity value. How much equity? 50,000 shares of options, hidden in a complex structure. If Data Vault goes public at the expected valuation, those options will be worth approximately $2 million. I felt sick. And the insider trading? 17 confirmed trades based on information Webb provided during their meetings. Total profit of approximately $150,000 so far. She's got another $50,000 invested in companies that haven't announced their Data Vault partnerships yet. This is federal crime territory. Multiple felonies, Diane confirmed. But there's more. I have a source inside Data Vault. Your wife and Webb have been discussing your removal. My removal? They can't simply divorce you because the financial discovery would expose the insider trading. They're building a case that you're emotionally unstable, possibly dangerous. Elena has been documenting fake incidents for months. She showed me emails Elena had sent to a personal Gmail account, backing up diary entries that were complete fabrications. According to these entries, I had anger issues, threw things during arguments, made threats. She'd been building this false narrative for 6 months. The plan is to claim domestic abuse after the IPO, Diane explained. Get a restraining order, use it to expedite divorce proceedings with minimal asset discovery. Webb's personal attorney is already preparing the paperwork. I stared at the evidence, feeling the ground shift beneath me. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a conspiracy to destroy me. What do I do? Document everything. Protect yourself first. Then decide how you want to handle it. I chose to handle it methodically, scientifically, the way I'd approach any complex problem. Break it down into components. Address each systematically. Let the laws of cause and effect do their work. First, I needed to protect myself from the false abuse allegations. I installed security cameras throughout our house, completely legal since I was a joint owner. The cameras would show Elena's complete lack of fear, her normal behavior, the absence of any conflict. I began recording all our conversations using Arizona's one-party consent law. Every normal interaction, every casual moment that contradicted her fabricated narrative of fear and abuse. I consulted with Sarah Martinez, a divorce attorney who specialized in defending against false abuse allegations. We need to be proactive, she said. Get character witnesses, psychological evaluations, documentation of your normal behavior patterns. I obtained affidavits from colleagues at school, parents of students, neighbors, all attesting to my calm demeanor and professional conduct. I underwent a voluntary psychological evaluation that formally documented my mental health and lack of violent tendencies. For the insider trading, Sarah connected me with the SEC's whistleblower program. We filed a detailed complaint including Elena's trades, the timing correlation with Data Vault announcements, and Marcus Webb's involvement. The SEC takes this very seriously, Sarah explained, especially with an IPO pending. This could trigger a full federal investigation. My next move involved Data Vault's board of directors. The company had recently added 2 independent directors, accomplished women brought in to improve corporate governance before the IPO. I compiled a comprehensive dossier. Evidence of Marcus's affair with a subordinate, the inappropriate stock options, the planned promotion over qualified candidates, the insider trading that could destroy the company's valuation. I sent it anonymously to both directors, knowing they'd be legally obligated to investigate or face personal liability. I also reached out to Marcus's ex-wife, Amanda Webb. Their divorce decree included a morality clause. If Marcus was proven to have an affair with a married woman within 5 years of their divorce, his alimony payments would double from $15,000 to $30,000 per month. Through Diane, I provided Amanda's attorney with 18 months of evidence, Instagram photos, credit card records, reservation records for romantic dinners during Elena's emergencies. This is ironclad, Amanda's attorney told me. He'll owe her an additional $270,000 in retroactive payments plus the doubled amount going forward. The next phase required patience. I continued playing my role while the various investigations began. Elena grew increasingly stressed, though she tried to hide it. The fake emergencies continued, but now I documented everything: her departures, her returns, the tracking data showing her at Marcus's house. March 15th was approaching, the Ides of March. Elena had grown careless, actually marking it in her phone calendar as MW 11:30. Marcus Webb at 11:30 p.m. I prepared everything for that day. The morning of March 15th began like any other. I taught my 5 physics classes, including a special demonstration of Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I used a series of pendulums to show how force transfers through a system, how one impact can trigger a cascade of consequences. Notice how the initial action seems small, I told my students, releasing the first pendulum. But the result impacts everything in the system. They took notes dutifully, not knowing their teacher had set his own pendulums in motion. Elena went to work as usual, texting me about a boring budget meeting, complaining about incompetent coworkers. She had no idea that at that very moment, Data Vault's board was in an emergency session reviewing the anonymous package they'd received. At 2 p.m., I got a text from Diane. It's happening. At 3 p.m., while Elena was in her budget meeting, the SEC arrived at Data Vault with subpoenas. The company's legal department immediately issued a litigation hold, preserving all communications between Marcus Webb and Elena Sandoval. At 4:30 p.m., Marcus was escorted from his office by security, his access revoked pending board investigation. At 5 p.m., Elena was called to Human Resources. She walked in expecting a routine meeting. Instead, she found the head of HR, the company's general counsel, and 2 FBI agents. Mrs. Sandoval, you're being placed on administrative suspension pending investigation of financial irregularities and insider trading allegations, the HR director said. Please surrender your company devices and identification immediately. Elena tried to maintain composure. This is obviously a mistake. I need to speak with Marcus, Mr. Webb, immediately. Mr. Webb is also under investigation and unavailable, the general counsel replied. You'll need to come with these agents for questioning. Elena was allowed one phone call. She called me. Roger, something insane is happening. Her voice was panicked. All pretense dropped. The FBI is here. They're asking about my investments. I need you to come to the FBI field office right now. Which investments? I asked calmly. Our joint retirement accounts? No, they're asking about other investments. Please just come. Bring our financial records. Which financial records, Elena? The ones you've been hiding from me? The Merrill Lynch account with $147,000 in insider trading profits? Silence. Roger, how did you... Or should I bring the tracking data showing you've been at Marcus Webb's house during every single fake emergency? Your key card that you dramatically grab every time but haven't used to access Data Vault after hours and 6 months? You've been spying on me? No, Elena. I've been documenting your crimes. There's a difference. This is revenge because you found out about the affair. This is consequences for insider trading, fraud, and planning to frame me for domestic abuse. Oh yes, I know about the fake diary entries, the fabricated incidents, the restraining order you were planning to file after the IPO. I could hear her breath catching, the sound of her world collapsing. The FBI probably wants to discuss your 17 trades that preceded Data Vault partnership announcements. The SEC is very interested in those patterns. So is Marcus's ex-wife's attorney, by the way. That morality clause in their divorce is going to cost him an extra $270,000 plus doubled alimony going forward. You vindictive. Careful, Elena. You're on a recorded line at the FBI office. Everything you say can be used against you. I hung up. At 7 p.m., Amanda Webb's attorney successfully invoked the morality clause. A judge ruled that the proven affair triggered the penalty provisions immediately. At 8 p.m., I was grading papers in my home office when the doorbell rang. Marcus Webb stood on my porch, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. You destroyed everything, he said without preamble. No, Marcus. You destroyed everything. I just documented it. I held up my phone, obviously recording. You're on camera, by the way, multiple cameras. Would you like to add threatening behavior to your current legal problems? You don't understand what you've done. The IPO is ruined. The company will collapse. Hundreds of people will lose their jobs. Data Vault will be fine. It's a good company with good products. It just needs better leadership. Someone who doesn't use it as a personal dating pool and insider trading platform. Elena loves me. Elena loves what you could do for her career and bank account, just like you loved having power over a beautiful subordinate. Neither of you knows what love actually is. I could destroy you. I have resources. Had. Past tense. Your assets are about to be frozen by the FBI. Your ex-wife is taking a huge chunk of what's left. Your board is firing you with cause, triggering clawback provisions. You're about to be banned from serving as an officer of any public company. What exactly are you going to destroy me with? Your Instagram followers? He stood there. This powerful man who'd controlled hundreds of employees and millions in capital, reduced to impotent rage on a suburban porch. Get off my property, Marcus, and stay away from my wife. She's not going to be your wife much longer. No, but she's not going to be yours either. Federal prison tends to complicate wedding planning. He left without another word, his Bentley roaring away into the night. At 11:30 p.m., right on schedule, Elena's phone rang. I answered it. Data Vault emergency response. What? Who is this? Marcus's voice, confused and desperate. This is Roger Sandoval. The real emergency is that your conspiracy is exposed, your crimes are documented, and your future is federal prosecution. Elena won't be coming tonight. Or any night. You can't prove. I can, and I have. Every visit tracked by GPS. Every trade documented. Every fake emergency logged. Even the engagement ring you bought last week at Tiffany's for $45,000. Did Elena know about that? Or were you planning to surprise her after she destroyed me? I hung up and turned off Elena's phone. Elena came home at 2 a.m., released by the FBI pending further investigation. She looked destroyed. Makeup smeared, clothes wrinkled, the confident professional facade completely shattered. "We need to talk," she said, standing in our foyer like a stranger. "No, we don't. Your belongings are packed in the garage. The divorce papers are on the kitchen counter. You're served with an eviction notice giving you 7 days to vacate. Sarah Martinez is my attorney. Direct all communication through her. Roger, please. 15 years of marriage, which you threw away for stock options and a corner office. Was it worth it, Elena? Was playing corporate climber worth destroying our life? I made a mistake. You made 17 insider trades. You documented false abuse allegations. You plan to destroy my reputation and steal my assets. Those aren't mistakes, Elena. They're choices. Calculated, deliberate choices. She tried tears then, but they seemed forced, performative. I was seduced by the power, the money. Marcus made me feel special, important. Important? You were a tool for his ego and his libido. He was using you just like you were using me. That's not true. We have a real connection. Based on what? Crimes? Lies? The thrill of deception? You connected over destroying other people's lives for profit? You don't understand what it was like. The midnight calls. Being needed for critical missions. Being essential to something bigger than myself. Except none of it was real. I pulled out her data vault keycard from my pocket. This is your real keycard. The one you left in your drawer every time you grabbed your gym card for your fake emergencies. You weren't essential to anything except Marcus's ego and your own greed. How long have you known? Since February 24th, when I drove to Data Vault during your supposed emergency and found an empty parking lot. But I suspected something was wrong from the beginning. You're not as good an actress as you think, Elena. So this is revenge. This is justice. You committed federal crimes. You planned to destroy me with false allegations. You betrayed every vow we made. The consequences you're facing are entirely of your own making. What happens now? Now you face those consequences. The SEC will probably offer you a plea deal, cooperation against Marcus in exchange for reduced charges. You'll pay restitution, lose your securities licenses, probably get probation instead of prison if you're lucky. And if I'm not lucky, federal prison, 2 to 5 years. Martha Stewart did time for less than what you've done. How will I survive? The same way I'll survive your betrayal. One day at a time. The difference is I'll rebuild with integrity intact. You'll rebuild as a convicted felon. She gathered her boxes and left for a hotel that night. I changed the locks the next morning, legally permissible given the eviction notice and documented affair. The investigation moved with surprising speed. Data Vault's board, facing potential shareholder lawsuits, acted decisively. Marcus was fired with cause within a week, triggering clawback provisions worth $10 million. The company announced it was cooperating fully with federal investigators. Elena's attorney negotiated a plea deal within a month. 18 months probation, $75,000 in criminal fines, $150,000 in SEC civil penalties, disgorgement of all trading profits, and a lifetime ban from serving as an officer or director of any public company. She avoided prison by agreeing to testify against Marcus. Marcus faced harsher consequences. The weight of evidence, combined with Elena's cooperation, resulted in a 2-year federal prison sentence, $2 million in fines, and forfeiture of most of his assets. His ex-wife's successful morality clause claim took another massive chunk of his remaining wealth. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. Arizona's fraud provisions and Elena's criminal conduct meant she received only 20% of marital assets. The judge specifically cited her false abuse preparations as evidence of bad faith, ordering her to pay my legal fees. This is one of the most egregious cases of marital misconduct I've seen in 30 years on the bench, the judge said during the final hearing. Mrs. Sandoval, you didn't just betray your marriage vows. You planned to destroy your husband's reputation and freedom for financial gain. The court finds your conduct unconscionable. Data Vault survived but never went public. The scandal had destroyed investor confidence. The company was eventually acquired by a competitor for 40% of its expected IPO valuation. Employees who'd been promised wealth through stock options, including Elena, received nothing. Several female employees who'd been passed over for promotion in favor of Elena filed discrimination suits. The company settled for a total of $5 million, further damaging its reputation and value. Elena found work eventually, but her options were severely limited. The insider trading conviction made her unemployable at any company handling sensitive data. She took a job as a help desk technician at a community college in Tucson, earning $35,000 annually, less than a quarter of her former salary. I saw her once about a year after the divorce at a Whole Foods in Scottsdale. She was buying generic brands, counting coupons, driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic. She saw me but didn't approach, understanding finally that some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. Marcus served 14 months in federal prison, released early for good behavior. He emerged to find his fortune reduced by 80%, his reputation destroyed, his name toxic in tech circles. He attempted a comeback with a new startup but couldn't raise funding. Last I heard, he was working as a consultant for a small IT firm in Austin, making less than Elena once did. His ex-wife Amanda, on the other hand, used the windfall from the morality clause to start her own successful interior design firm. She sent me a thank you note with a bottle of exceptional wine, writing, "Sometimes the best revenge is simply revealing the truth." I was promoted to physics department chair when my predecessor retired. The administration had been impressed by how I'd handled the situation, methodically, legally, without allowing it to affect my teaching performance. "You showed remarkable composure under extraordinary circumstances," the principal told me. "That's the kind of leadership we need." The 35% salary increase was welcome, ironically more than I'd have gained from Elena's planned promotion to CTO. The SEC hired me as an occasional consultant, helping them understand technical aspects of insider trading in the tech sector. The work was interesting and paid well, $500 per hour to explain how employees might use privileged information for profit. I started dating after a year. Caroline was a literature professor at Arizona State, divorced herself after discovering her husband's gambling addiction. She appreciated that I'd stood up for myself without becoming bitter. "You could have just destroyed them out of spite," she said over dinner one evening. "Instead, you let their own actions destroy them." There's something poetic about that. Physics, not poetry, I corrected. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. They acted with deception and criminality. The reaction was exposure and consequences. See? Poetry. You're a romantic scientist. We married 2 years later in a simple afternoon ceremony. No drama, no deception, no midnight emergencies. Just honest promises witnessed by honest friends in honest daylight. Caroline found my documentation of Elena's deception fascinating in an academic way. I'd kept everything, the spreadsheets, the tracked locations, the recorded conversations, the security footage. It's like a novel, she said, reviewing the files. The building tension, the reveal, the cascading consequences. You could write a book. Who would believe it? A woman faking server emergencies to cover an affair while committing insider trading and planning to frame her husband for abuse? It's too elaborate for fiction. Truth is stranger than fiction, Caroline said. Fiction has to make sense. 3 years after the Ides of March revelation, I received a letter from Elena. She was in therapy, she wrote, working through what she now understood was a complex web of narcissism and entitlement. Dear Roger, the letter began, I'm writing as part of my recovery process to acknowledge the harm I caused and take responsibility for my actions. The midnight emergencies weren't just about Marcus or the money. They were about feeling important, essential, powerful. Every fake crisis made me feel like a hero rushing off to save the day. I loved the performance, the technical jargon, the dramatic departures, your concerned support as I left. I see now that I was addicted to the deception itself. The thrill of living a double life, of being someone important in a secret world you didn't know existed. It was intoxicating in a way I can't fully explain. Marcus represented everything I thought I wanted: wealth, power, status. But really, he was just another prop in my performance. I didn't love him any more than I loved the fake emergencies. I loved what he represented, what being with him said about me. The planning to frame you for abuse, that's the part I'm most ashamed of. You were nothing but supportive, loving, trusting, and I was prepared to destroy you to protect my crimes. I rationalized it as necessary, but really it was just another performance, another role to play, the abused wife escaping to freedom. I understand now that I threw away something real for something that was never more than illusion. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was honest. You loved me for who I was, not who I pretended to be, and I couldn't see the value in that until I'd lost it. The midnight calls have stopped, but I still wake at those hours, remembering the rush of the lie, the excitement of deception. It's my punishment, to forever wake when honest people sleep, reminded of who I became in those dark hours. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I destroyed, and that the person who did those things feels like a stranger to me now. I hope you found happiness. Real happiness, not the performance of it. With sincere regret, Elena. I read the letter twice, then filed it with all the other documentation. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that hadn't been said through consequences and legal proceedings. Caroline asked if the letter brought closure. There was already closure, I told her. The moment I answered Marcus's call that night and said, Data Vault Emergency Response. That was the end. Everything else was just aftermath. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't investigated? She would have gone through with her plan. I'd probably be in prison on false abuse charges while she lived in Paradise Valley as Mrs. Marcus Webb, wealthy from insider trading and my stolen assets. That's terrifying. That's why I documented everything. In physics, we say you can't manage what you can't measure. I measured the deception, which allowed me to manage its consequences. Life continued. I taught physics, explaining fundamental forces to teenagers. Caroline taught literature, exploring human nature through fiction. We built a life based on truth, trust, and the mutual understanding that some emergencies are real and some are manufactured for someone else's benefit. The security cameras I'd installed for protection remained, but now they just recorded the peaceful life of a remarried couple. No midnight emergencies, no dramatic departures, no performances for an audience that didn't exist. Sometimes, around midnight, I'd wake from habit formed during those months of fake emergencies. I'd check my phone, find nothing, remember that the only emergency that ever really existed was the one Elena created for herself. A crisis of character she couldn't resolve with technical jargon or dramatic departures. The Data Vault keycard still sits in my desk drawer, tucked under some old papers. Occasionally, I pull it out. This piece of plastic that Elena had been so careful to never actually use during her performances. It reminds me that sometimes the most important evidence is what's absent: the missing badge scans, the empty parking lot, the silence where follow-up calls should have been. 5 years have passed now since the midnight emergency stopped. Elena still works at the community college, living quietly in her small apartment. Marcus runs a struggling consulting firm, his dreams of tech empire crushed by his own hubris. Data Vault exists as a division of a larger company, its potential never realized. And I teach Newton's laws to new students each year, using the same pendulum demonstration, explaining how one action can trigger a cascade of consequences through an entire system. They take notes dutifully, understanding the physics but not the larger truth. That human lives operate by these same laws. That deception is a force that generates an equal and opposite reaction. That every lie is a pendulum raised, waiting to swing back with devastating precision. The fake midnight emergencies had promised Elena importance, excitement, drama. Instead, they delivered exposure, consequence, and loss. She'd performed the role of essential emergency responder so convincingly that she'd forgotten it was just a performance, that the real emergency was the ethical system failure she'd programmed into her own life. The last time I saw Elena was 6 months ago at a coffee shop near the courthouse where she was filing bankruptcy paperwork. The insider trading fines and restitution had finally exhausted her resources. She looked older, worn down by consequence and regret. She was wearing clothes I recognized from our marriage, things she'd considered beneath her during the Marcus era. We made eye contact across the coffee shop. She started to approach, then stopped, seeing something in my face. Not anger or hatred, just the calm finality of a closed equation, a completed experiment, a hypothesis fully tested and confirmed. She left without speaking, understanding finally that some systems once crashed can't be rebooted. Some data once corrupted can't be recovered. Some emergencies, even real ones, can't be resolved. I finished grading my physics papers, red pen marking errors in calculation, failures in logic, mistakes in understanding fundamental laws. Unlike marriage, these mistakes could be corrected, learned from, improved upon in the next attempt. My phone sat silent on the table. No midnight emergencies, no dramatic calls, no urgent summons to crisis, just the quiet peace of truth, the simple elegance of reality, the profound relief of living without performance. In my desk at home, that Data Vault keycard sits next to our wedding rings, Two props from a performance that ran for 15 years before the final curtain fell. Sometimes Caroline asks why I keep them. They're teaching tools, I tell her. Reminders that not all emergencies are real, not all urgent calls require response, and sometimes the most dangerous crisis is the one someone creates to justify what they wanted to do anyway. She nods, understanding in her literary way that every story needs its artifacts, its evidence of what was and what was lost. The midnight hours pass peacefully now. No phone rings with manufactured crisis. No one rushes off to save servers that aren't failing. The real emergency, trust betrayed, vows broken, love counterfeited, has been resolved through the slow, steady work of truth and consequence. And in the darkness of those midnight hours, when I sometimes wake from habit, I think about Elena, alone in her apartment, possibly awake too, remembering the thrill of those fake emergencies, the excitement of deception, the intoxicating feeling of being essential to a crisis that existed only in her performance. She discovered too late that the most catastrophic system failure isn't in servers or backup arrays or firewall breaches. It's in the human heart that chooses deception over truth, performance over reality, the thrill of the lie over the quiet dignity of honest love. The midnight emergencies have ended, but their echoes remain. In court documents, in changed lives, in the lesson that some crashes can't be prevented by emergency response because the emergency itself is the crash, performed in real time by someone who forgot they were destroying actual lives for an audience that was never really watching.